Well, bracketology is certainly in session, and we're here with everyone's favorite bracketologist, Joe Lunardi from ESPN. Joe, take us back to how this whole thing with bracketology and ESPN started, because it's certainly on the mind of everybody this time of year.
Well, I was the 7-foot starting center on my high school team, and that's how I got into basketball. No, I'm a print journalist, I guess, if there is such a background anymore, and I was just covering games and stringing games and always loved the NCAA Tournament, and who doesn't really, and started making brackets on little slips of paper, and eventually there was this thing called the internet, and ESPN.com was born, and they were either foolish or clairvoyant enough to put the brackets online, and the public took it from there. I'm just the facilitator of their passion.
Speaking of ESPN, BracketBusters coming up for the network, something that's really taken off over the last 10 years or so. How important has that been for the mid-majors and the smaller schools with respect to building their case for the NCAA Tournament?
Well, let's take a look last year at VCU, which many of us didn't think would even be in the NCAA Tournament field. Not only were they in, but of course they won 5 NCAA games and went all the way to the Final Four. But without a 1-point win at Wichita State in BracketBusters, we're probably looking at somebody else in that spot. So yes, it can be very important. And I guarantee you this weekend somebody's going to punch their ticket. But we have no idea in advance who it might be. Maybe it's Long Beach State winning at Creighton. We'll see on Friday and Saturday of this coming weekend.
A team that certainly got a lot of run, might not be too familiar to the lay college basketball fan, but that's Murray State in the great season that they've had. Evaluate them, talk about them, and kind of how you see them fitting into the landscape as February wraps up in March and we roll into March.
I think Murray State's a very good team. I don't think we should confuse them, though, with some of the other maybe 0 or 1 loss non-BCS power conference schools that have come out in recent years. I think ultimately they'll probably be a 7 or 8 seed unless they're able to beat St. Mary's in this BracketBusters game. They have the Gales at home, but trust me, if St. Mary's and Murray played best of 7 on a neutral court, St. Mary's would win in 5 or maybe 6. And I think Murray then will go on and win the OVC tournament because they're far and away the best team in that league. But we've also seen as recently as the last couple of Thursdays, not only can they lose in the league, they almost lost twice. They got away with 1 at home against Southeast Missouri before losing to Tennessee State. So I think you'll see Murray in the tournament, probably with a single-digit seed. But I don't see them as the kind of mid-major that's going to win 2 or 3 games in the Big Dance.
Joe, if a team came to you that was on the bubble and they asked you to look at their resume and to make a case for them, what are 1 or 2 things that you're looking at to make that case for them to get into the tournament?
I would say it seems to me, studying the committee in recent years, and the sands do shift from time to time, top 50 wins, because ultimately those are the teams that play in the tournament and are in the at-large pool, and the committee's looking for whether or not you'd be competitive against that subset of contenders. So top 50 wins, and what did you do in the non-conference with your schedule strength and challenging yourself away from home in particular, maybe in neutral court settings, because every year we see a team or 2 that's left home simply because they played a poor non-conference schedule.
Joe, what are your expectations for the A-10 regarding postseason berths?
Temple is certainly going to be in the NCAA Tournament and is a Sweet 16 looking team to me. St. Louis should be in the NCAA Tournament, and they'll be a very difficult opponent just because of style. Don't ask me to comment on Xavier because I have no idea, like no one really does, about what happened to such a dominant team. It appears that most of their injuries are from the neck up instead of the neck down, and that they've never psychologically recovered from what happened in that Cincinnati game back in December. And then somebody else is probably going to have to win the Atlantic 10 tournament in Atlantic City. I'm not sure there's another at-large team in the mix, although numerically you'd have to say it's St. Joseph's because they're a top 50 team in the RPI with a top 25 schedule, and they do have a couple of scalps in Creighton and Dayton and Villanova, but they would still have to beat one of the league contenders, Temple, St. Louis, Xavier, between now and the end of the A-10 tournament, I believe, to get an at-large.
Joe, last question for you. Obviously, we know with a certain degree of certain idea who the top seeds are going to be. There's a pool, obviously, that we're not going to be surprised that if certain teams come out of this pool. But
I hope I can get the top 4 right. Yes.
But in your opinion, what is a team that could that's flying under the radar might kind of swoop in the last minute to take that number 1 seed, or are the seeds pretty much locked up at this point?
No, I think only 2 of the 4 are locked up for Syracuse and Kentucky, and unusually, I think there's at least 6 teams in play for the other 2 spots. You've got 2 strong contenders out of the Big 12 in Kansas and Baylor. They're not both going to make it to the top line. You've got 2 strong contenders in the Big 10, Ohio State and Michigan State. You've got 2 strong contenders in the ACC, Duke and North Carolina. And each of those leagues will sort itself out either in return games in the regular season amongst those giants, or in kind of rubber games in their conference championships. And I think you'll see ultimately Ohio State and Kansas on the top line, because I think those are the teams that are going to prevail here down the stretch.
Thank you so much.
You got it.